Hello. Oh, my captioning has vanished. Where are you? This is going well, isn't it? Yeah, come on. It's there. I just hide it and then reveal it again. Oh no. Oh no. Where have you gone, captions? Is it in its properties? Capture method. There we go. It's because I had it minimized. I forgot that happened yesterday, and but there we go. It's working now. There we go. As you can see, this is a highly technical operation where I know exactly what I'm doing, and this whole concept of it being easy, where I can just turn it on and then it's there. That's not really how this works. I also haven't. I'm going to go on to mod view for this because then I can pause that and I don't have to look at my face, but I can still see the chat. There we go. Because my chat on Streamlabs continues to not work. I'm not really sure why, but there we are. Hello, this has happened again. So I am now here again. I don't know at what point I do. Well, I've read a lot of books about at what point things become habits, but it's definitely not on the second day, so we'll see how we go. Hopefully I'm more audible today. I realised only after finishing yesterday that the entire thing had gone through my webcam microphone, not my incredibly expensive and lovely microphone, which had just been sitting there. The captions were working off the correct microphone, but Streamlabs wasn't. So you can still hear yesterday's, but I apologise that the it's not the best. It's not the best quality. Anyway, I need to actually start talking about something of relevance because otherwise I will use up my 30 minutes just rambling about stuff. I've just come straight from the last panel of the conference I've been at today and yesterday. I've had a very intense day because I realised I'm going to talk about this rather than my dissertation. I will talk about my dissertation tomorrow. What happened? Or maybe we'll get to it later, we'll see. So I went in February, which seems like a very long time ago, to a conference from the British Society of Aesthetics that was held at my uni. And it was completely life-changing, and I had this amazing time. I did talk about this a little bit yesterday, and it was so good. And I did not talk to anyone apart from I spoke very briefly to my PhD supervisor, and I sat with her for one panel. The entire rest of the time, I had my lovely space right in the back corner, right at the back of the room. One of the things with my anxiety that I don't think it's something I talk about a lot. It's a thing that people who have been in a physical space with me know. Obviously, it's not been that relevant recently because who goes outside? I have to be in a place where I can see all of the room. So in a restaurant, I won't want to be on a table in the middle of the room, but the problem is that I often don't feel that I'm able to say, can I go to this particular sort of seat? And then I end up in that seat and I'm uncomfortable. But being at the back of a room where I can see and know where everyone is actually really important for managing my anxiety. I apologise, you can probably hear door noise. That is something that I did when I was there at the conference, but it meant that I was like off on my own and I didn't get forced to talk to people. And then as soon as I came out, because it was quite busy and we were in one particular building of the uni and everything was held in there. So like all of the socialising was in there. You went between, because it was a conference where panels ran concurrently, and so you'd go from one to the other. The only interaction I did was I managed to go to a workshop where I did manage to speak to people a bit. I realised I'd forgotten about that when I was thinking about it earlier. But in general, my experience of that conference was very individual. And it was incredibly powerful and wonderful, but it remained something that I experienced very much on my own. interestingly, I did experience a really intense feeling of belonging, which is an impressive thing to feel when you're not interacting with anyone really. But I've had that again at this conference yesterday and today, which I only found out about on Wednesday. And I'm going to repeat myself a little bit. I think I said that yesterday, but I can't really remember, so let's carry on. It's been very intensive, but the fact that it's online has made such a huge difference. So yesterday, my triumph was that I had managed to say something in the text chat on Zoom during one of the. So the way this conference has been formatted is that all of the panels and the presentations were recorded in advance, so we watched all of those in advance, and then all of the panels that we've been going through yesterday and today have basically been the Q&A portion. So when normally in a conference you'd go to a panel and the people would present and then the Q&As would follow them immediately, it was actually really nice because there was a lot more time to sort of think about it. Well, not for me because I watched it all in 2 days, but for the people who didn't find out about it with 12 hours notice, they had a lot more room to do that. And even for me, when I was watching the panels, I could pause them. It meant that my notes have come out a lot better because I was able to, pause and actually write full quotes and citations down properly, which was lovely. Obviously, you can't do that in a live thing. And so that really helped. I think also separating things out meant it had more time to percolate in my brain. I know I've seen other people from the conference saying that on Twitter. But the biggest thing is that I could talk without being visible or physically present. And I'm very conscious as I participate in this conference that's based in Glasgow that I wouldn't have been able to go if there wasn't a pandemic. Because in all likelihood I wouldn't have I wouldn't have gone that far because I can't take planes on my own. I'm not very good at taking planes even with people, but I definitely wouldn't have been able to fly up on my own. And I can take the train, but it's a very long journey, which then is problematic in different ways. So the problem with generally doing better in train travel is that I also do kind of worse because the train takes longer, so I have to spend more time travelling and in public and stuff, so it's sort of a double-edged sword. But yeah, I wouldn't have gone, and I wouldn't have managed to do that. And then today it escalated significantly because I went to the coffee morning, which was the first thing today, because obviously conferences normally involve quite a lot of networking as well as listening to the presentations and sharing ideas and stuff, which I, in that first conference I did this year, did none of, because talking to my PhD supervisor doesn't count as networking, because I've already networked her. That has been achieved. Then today I went, okay, here's what I'm going to do. I know I'm not going to feel confident sort of, chatting and fully joining in with a coffee morning, but I'll go, especially because most of the panels have had sort of 30 or so people at them. So it's not a super small group, not huge either. And yeah, so I decided I was going to turn up. I was going to sit there with my webcam off as normal and my microphone off as normal, and I was just going to listen. And then someone said, there's actually quite a few of us, I think there was about 20 at that point, or creeping towards 20 as this discussion was going on. Why don't we go into breakout rooms, which is a thing I've not done it in Zoom before, but I'm sort of familiar with it, where you go into effectively side rooms where it's just a few of you. And I know this is used a lot in classroom teaching that's done via Zoom and that sort of thing. And everyone said, hey, that sounds like a good idea. And I was sitting there thinking, actually, this might be a way in which I can talk to people, because talking to 2 people I don't know, while still very difficult for me, is much more doable than talking to 20 people I don't know. I think there's actually a number for me where it becomes more possible. Like, I think I would be more okay giving a presentation to 200 people than I am giving a presentation to 5 in that strange way. You reach a point where an audience becomes very amorphous and depersonalized because of the mass of them. And that's definitely something I found, because I did a lot of stage performance when I was younger. And at that point, it was a lot easier for me to do that. But also it was easier because the audiences were so big that it didn't, you couldn't really identify them as individual beings. It was just a mass of people. Also on a stage you have the advantage that mostly they're not lit, so you can't actually even see faces. Anyway, so everyone is sort of agreeing to this, and I realised that I'm actually okay with it. I don't really get much time to really consider. I think if I'd had longer to make the decision, I might well have not gone if I'd known that was a thing that was going to happen. As it normally, it could very easily have gone wrong, and I do acknowledge that. And I think I hope that I would have felt able to leave if it became a problem for me. I have previously faked disconnecting to leave a Zoom that I wasn't confident in, and so I know I've done that before. And I didn't, and I got put in a room with I think at one time there were 3 people. We did this, like, we rotated, so I had several different ones, and I think I had 2 people in the first one and then 3 in the second. But the second and third, they were like, there were some people I'd seen before, and sorry about that noise, I put my microphone on and I put my webcam on and I talked to all of them. I discovered that one of the organisers of the entire conference is an admin in my uni, but not just in my uni, in my department. So that was quite fun. I had lovely conversations with people about the stuff that I'm researching, and I've got Twitter friends now, and they've been talking to me on Twitter, and I managed to share on Twitter how hard it had been, and I got all of this support from people. And it has been a very weird day. And that's why I'm not talking about my dissertation yet today. Because and also I wasn't, so I definitely noticed, because I think it's important when I talk about achieving things like this, it's very easy to whitewash it. And I mean that not in the racial sense, but in the sense of portraying it in entirely one colour as entirely one thing. And it's very easy to say, oh my God, I did this thing that is incredibly hard for me because of my disability. But by doing that, if you lean into that too hard, you can sort of erase the problems that you did have whilst doing it and the fact that it was still difficult whilst you were doing it. So I definitely had a very immediate spike in hyperanalyzing, so when my brain weasels will start to be like, hey, you're not smiling enough, or you're smiling too much, you look weird, it will be that sort of thing. Everyone has these sorts of thoughts. I'm not suggesting that having them at all is in itself a sign of chronic anxiety, but the constancy and the intensity of them, and the pathological level of them, I don't know if that's a correct use of that word, but I'm going to go with it, it is very different. And I definitely found that happening. I found I was very, paranoid isn't quite the right word. I think it's just an extension of that same hyper-awareness of, I don't know, if I'm meant to be speaking now, am I listening well enough? All that sort of thing. Just being very, almost the opposite of dissociating, and being overly in tune with what was being said to the point that it wasn't actually productive at all. Because there is a natural distance you have from things as you're engaging with them. Otherwise you fail to conceptualise them properly, I think. So it was very difficult, but what's really interesting is what I didn't notice was a lot of physical symptoms whilst I was doing it. I definitely got warmer and was a bit sweaty, which happened, I mean, sometimes it's just because my office is small and the door is closed, and sometimes it's because the temperature is warmer. But I do also know it happens as a symptom of me becoming anxious. Whenever I'm streaming, I feel quite warm. And I know that I possibly was speaking a little bit faster. I speak quite fast anyway, so it's quite hard to tell. I felt like I was speaking faster, which in itself is something that I notice happening. But yeah, mostly I didn't get any physical symptoms until afterwards, and so that was strange and wonderful. It felt horrible once I finished. I got out of it, and because I get so full of adrenaline when I'm doing stuff like this, and the adrenaline will carry me through it and get me through it, and then I'll get to the end of it, and I left the Zoom, and I exploded in all caps to my best friend about this thing I'd just managed to do. And as soon as I'd finished telling her that, the drop off from all of the energy, all of the adrenaline was really sharp, and I suddenly realised I couldn't breathe. And it's interesting how all of those physical symptoms I had my chest was very tense, all of my breath was very shallow. I wasn't fully hyperventilating, but I was definitely really struggling to breathe. I felt a bit wobbly. I was very tearful. I was very happy. But the thing that I'm really pleased about, and I expect that this might happen at some point, but if it doesn't, I'll be delighted, is that I haven't really, that hyper-analysing that I was doing hasn't persisted past that interaction. And I think that's a really powerful thing, because often what will happen is I'll manage to do something like that, and then my brain weasels will not turn off, and will continue belittling me with, oh my God, I can't believe you didn't pronounce that word properly, or, it will be that sort of thing that really probably no one else noticed, or, you slightly interrupted that person, and that's the sort of thing I become really, really self-conscious of. I was very conscious of my face as well. I think being on Zoom and doing things like this is weirdly more intense than being in person in a way that I can't quite explain. I think because when you're, if I'm in a classroom, like I've got my PhD notebook in front of me right now, and I've got my notebook in front of me. This is a normal stance for me to be in a seminar, in a lecture. No one is going to think anything weird of me looking down here at my notes. I might have a laptop in front of me and be looking at my laptop. No one's going to think anything weird about that. But for some reason, the moment I get into any kind of video chat, I feel that I must be looking up here, because otherwise it's weird. And I don't think this is a problem that other people have, because I've seen people get up, I've seen people have discussions with their dog, people have been interrupted by their children, all sorts of things. But I become obsessed with the idea that I need to have this particular perfect presentation that is realistically impossible, because, sometimes you're going to hear the door opening as my husband comes home, you're going to hear the cat has headbutted my door before. And that sort of thing. And that it's really interesting that my brain weasels haven't continued in that way. I'm definitely aware that I'm very tired. One of the first thing my best friend said to me was, oh my goodness, that's amazing. And the second thing was, will you please take a break? Which is completely correct. And I do need to make sure that, so I've got, in, what time is it? In just over half an hour, there's the last thing for the conference, which is a film screening that I really want to go to, because there's a bunch of illness narratives through sort of filmmaking and creativity, which I'm really excited about. And also I've really enjoyed this conference, and I don't really want it to end. So I'm going to go to that, but I think then I'm going to try very hard not to go straight to working. When I got to my lunch break, because we had the coffee morning, then a 15-minute break, then a panel, then lunch. And I had originally planned to do this at lunchtime. That's why I haven't done this at lunchtime. That's why I've done it now. And I'm glad that I made that decision, because that was the right one to do. I knew I had like an hour-long break here. I wanted to preserve my lunch break for calming down. And I think that was the right thing to do. But interestingly, the first thing I did and the first compulsion that I had when I had that break was to start writing. And that's going to make me cry, because I want to get in tomorrow to what my dissertation actually is about. Because I feel like I had a moment today when I sat down to write there where I really started to move towards actually what I want it to be like. There was a panel yesterday with a presentation from a woman who writes poetry about her experience of MS, and she was saying that she always writes in third person, and very rarely writes in first person, because to her, first person is dangerous, first person is too close. She needs the distance of third person to be safe. And I found myself writing about that and coming to understand that I is dangerous and she is safe. And I have always felt that, because that's why role-playing, my dissertation is about role-playing if you weren't here yesterday, that's why the embodied experience of role-playing is so healing for me and is so vitally important, because the thread that goes through all of the problems I've had is that I get stuck in places where I don't feel safe, and then I try to find ways to make myself safe, and those ways aren't always positive, or always, the best things to be doing, but they're the only things I can do at that point. And it was so powerful to realise that distinction of the first and third person. And it made me think about this when I started my creative writing course. We had a few seminars before we did any workshopping, and then we had one where we did workshopping. And I was in the first group that workshopped, and I was very aware that I was likely to be writing things that other people weren't, because I was writing fantasy fiction and stuff like that. And I apologise if you can now hear construction work, by the way. Hopefully my microphone isn't picking it up. But yeah, so I got into this workshop and I got some lovely feedback. And then I had a lot of people saying, why isn't this in first person? And I hate first person writing. I almost never write in first person when I'm writing fiction. I'll write in first person when I'm writing narrative nonfiction, but at that point I'm choosing to write about myself in a close way. So to me, that makes sense. But when I'm writing fiction, even if what I'm doing is inserting my personal story, I will always write in second or third person. And it had never occurred to me, and it didn't occur to me at that point in that seminar, that the reason I do that is to keep myself safe and separate. And suddenly I had this room of people who all wrote in a very similar style to each other, going, oh no, you should use first person is much more powerful. And I couldn't quite articulate why, and it feels like I've gone on this journey where almost a year later I can finally articulate why third person narrative is so important, to the extent that I almost want to call my dissertation doesn't have a title, and I got in a massive panic about this when I first got. I don't know if I can get this out without making a lot of noise. I really like notebooks. I really like stationery, which will not surprise anyone who knows me. This is my dissertation notebook, which is holographic. I don't know how well you can see that. It looked like you could just about see it. And I opened it, and if you can see, I opened it and I coloured the title page, and I went, oh look, here's these lovely highlighters I also bought, because I bought a lot of stationery when I bought this notebook. And then I realised I had to write a title. And I had a massive panic because I didn't have a title, and I still don't have a title. But I'm beginning to think that maybe something involving like third person narrative might be sort of healing through first person narratives is really what I'm trying to talk about. And I'll get into it more tomorrow, because I want to talk about the 4 sort of categories or topics that my dissertation moves through, and talk a bit about how I'm producing it and the things I've been thinking about in terms of episodic and fragmented narrative and how that relates to role playing in general and the finite nature of role playing games, and they are in themselves inherently fragments, and that is something I'm really realizing as I'm talking now, so I'm going to have to write that down when I close the stream. But yeah, and that is something I want to talk about tomorrow, but I'm glad today that I got to talk about and process a bit more that experience, because I think I hadn't really had a chance to think more about why I was doing this stream thing other than because I wanted to. But I think it is about me processing the experience of everything linked together, because whilst I get to do that in my mentoring and obviously in conversations with friends and family, and in writing on my blog and things like that, there's something that's very different about coming here without any plan. I don't have to at any point, like even for my mentoring, I have to set targets and talk about how I'm going to meet those targets and how I've met those targets and that sort of thing. It's really nice to have somewhere where I can just go, what am I thinking today? What am I processing? What do I need room to process? And I think that's something that's going to be really valuable to me, both now and in the future. Because I'd sort of had the thought of, if this works, and it's very possible it won't work, this might be the last one you ever see, I might come in tomorrow and go, no, that's a stupid idea, why did I ever start that? I might get through a week and then go, actually this is too much. I might get through a month and go, this is too much, or whatever. But we'll see. As I said yesterday, I'm happy even if that, however much, is all it turns out to be. But theoretically, I could carry on doing this through my PhD and use it as a resource then. And I think it's something, especially the reason that I research the things I do is because of their importance to me. And we were talking about this in some of the Q&As today. And there's this beautiful, amazing quote that was from one of the presenters in this last panel. And this thing that we were talking about why people write memoirs and illness narratives and why people write creatively in any way as part of their experience of illness. And Julie said, they reach for the tools that fit their hands and they are writers, so they write. And I think that, firstly, it's utterly beautiful. And I think that's something I'm very aware of, that my tool isn't necessarily inherently writing, it's storytelling as a general thing. It's oral storytelling through role playing, through gaming, through writing of all different types. And I think that's the thing that holds all of my academic interests together, that and it coming from me and from my experience. So I think this is really valuable, and I hope it's something that carries on being a thing that I keep doing. But I'm also trying not to get too far ahead of myself because the whole point is to come and talk, and I think I have a tendency to feel very disconnected from the things I say without thinking about them beforehand, and to feel that everything I say has to be hyper-analysed before it leaves my mouth. And I think that's especially possible when you do most of your interaction online, because you're typing it, so there's a more chance to pause. It's more obvious if I pause when I'm talking aloud than if I pause when I'm typing or rewrite something. You can't rewrite when you're talking in quite the same way. And I think I want to get more in touch with the side of myself that comes out when I just speak, rather than always seeing the side of myself that comes out when I've created it. I don't know if, hopefully that distinction makes sense. It's something that I want to try and explore. It's something that I think is relevant to my research when I get into it for my PhD, and looking at one of the reasons I want to look at different types of texts is to see those differences of the immediacy of things and the filtering of things, and is there a point where you lose authenticity, or are you just presenting one of many multiple truths? But I'm not going to talk about that too much now, because I've already been here half an hour and I need to stop and take a break before I go into this next and final thing. So yeah, at some point I might publicise this. It hasn't happened yet. But for now, if you have watched this, thank you very much for coming and being here. And I will see you all at some point tomorrow, probably significantly earlier, but then I'm not publicising it, so I can start whenever I want. But yeah, I will see you then, and maybe I will actually talk about my dissertation at that point. Right, see you tomorrow.